Well, look at that. Everything looks like it's working. Love it. All right, welcome to my set. Thank you all for showing up. Yay. So today I am actually going to be giving a talk instead of introducing somebody to give a talk. One of the things that I'm always talking about, actually this camera right here moves and follows me. So I'm just going to test it out. Okay. And it's doing it kind of creepy, it's kind of cool. Yeah, I'm always talking about building community, and I'm always talking about how any of you out there, we're always excited to have you give talks. We're always excited. We want more people to give talks. And honestly, it's been probably a little over a year since I've given a talk myself. I've been too busy pushing it on all of you. So I thought, all right, I have been sitting here asking for people to give presentations, but we never really talk about how to give a presentation. What's involved in giving a presentation? What are the things to keep in mind when you're making a presentation? So I've been thinking about that for a while, and I thought, I need to put together a presentation that combines some cybersecurity stuff because I love technology, love to talk about it, and also, talks about giving a presentation. And my internal dialogue was, hey, this way I can have the cues of what to do right there, in front of me. So this is kind of my cheater presentation as well. All right, so I'm going to start out by slowing down my speaking, because that's one of the things I always think about, is that sometimes I start running my words together. I start speaking too quickly, which can be good, but it doesn't need to happen all the time. And I'm going to start out by introducing myself a little more than I normally would. As I press the button and nothing happens. There we go. So I'm going to start out by introducing myself, talk a little bit about some kind of building confidence and engaging the audience, a little bit about visual aids, and some final tips and takeaways. Now, I have to let you all know that this morning I was like, you know what? I've got all this information. I need to put it into a presentation. It was 6:00 this morning or something. I'm like, I need to go ahead and put something together. So I pulled up a template from PowerPoint. I was like, I like the buildings in this template. That's why I'm going to use it. And then I started going through it, and the template is basically something that Microsoft put together on how to give presentations. So a lot of the slides in here are not like my original research as far as that goes, but I'm going to use them anyway. I thought it was pretty perfect to have that come up. All right, so one of the things that I've noticed over the years, I have watched, I don't know how many different presentations, and I'm always writing down little notes on the side of my notes from the actual presentation on what I like about what the speaker's doing, and what I think would be good if I were to give a presentation. What would I like to do in that situation? And I've noticed that when a speaker tells more about themselves, gets a little bit more personal about themselves, then I connect with them a little bit better. And often when they give me more information about who they are, then I give it a little more credence to what they're saying as well. So I'm going to do just that. So these are some of the things that are like some of the main things in my life. I do a lot of activities with my church. I help with their streaming online, which honestly I'm not good at. Anybody who's been here knows that's not really my forte, but I try to do what I can. I also sing on the worship team. So if you ever catch one of those streams where I'm not controlling the stream, you might hear me a little bit off key. It's totally fine. My wife, she sings beautifully, so she covers that. My family is, I absolutely love my family. I've got an amazing wife who cooks amazing food, and she loves sports, and she's just a fantastic person. She's watching the stream right now. So it's all true. It's all true. I love you, baby. My kids are fantastic. They're all like high school age and somewhere around there, doing their driver's training on robotics teams, and doing one of my daughters is doing a girls only robotics competition this week. And she's building robots, she's programming robots, she's going to be one of the drivers, I'm sure. She loves to do that stuff. I couldn't be more proud. And my youngest daughter, she's on the robotics team that I mentor. Um, yeah, that I mentor with a few other people, and I get to watch her become a leader there, and I can also see like how she treats people, and it's just amazing. And then my son, I'm actually going to talk a little bit about my son. It's a little different. No, he's great too. But I'm going to talk a little bit about him a little bit later on. Um, I consider all of you my friends. I love hanging out with my friends. I have friends that I golf with and golf really badly with. I don't do golf because I'm good at it. Do it because I like to be with people in a nice open area. Um, I love to no longer play football, but when I was younger, I would try to, and it was a lot of fun. Now I just watch it, and I think my favorite is high school football. You get the marching bands there, everybody's just trying the best that they can, and the concessions are really cheap. So it's one of my favorite things. I also like to smoke food. I try to bowl the food there. That's the only kind of smoking I tend to do. Um, and I love to go camping, which I don't do as often as I like. And I love technology, not as much as you guys, you see, but I still love technology. All right. So my work experience, I am currently the Director of IT and InfoSec and the Privacy Officer for Telcomon. I've worked for L3Harris Technologies in Grand Rapids Public Schools. I was owner of a business called Real OCS, Real On-Site Computer Solutions, for about 7 years. I've been IT manager, project manager. I've done IT management, project management, and consulting for, okay, somebody's good with math. 1997 is when I started in this. So I have a few years in all of this. And each one of those places taught me different things. I have a master's in information technology management. Apparently not making PowerPoints because I left that there like that. I have a bachelor's in cybersecurity and information assurance. And every one of these certifications, I think I've had somewhere around 38 certifications. Every one of them has come from, I was trying to learn something. Some of them were a part of me getting some of those degrees, but pretty much every one of them was, I was trying to learn something new. I love to learn. I'm a lifetime learner. If I couldn't learn, that would be really difficult for me. So that's where I don't want to know everything. And I am very far from it, and that makes me so happy. All right. So overcoming nervousness. I put this kind of early. I reorganized some of these slides, and this was one of them that I thought, this is a really good topic. I honestly have not learned yet how to overcome nervousness. I'm feeling nervous right now. Every time that I get in front of somebody and I speak, I'm nervous. When I walk up to somebody and I shake their hand and introduce myself, I'm nervous. Like I feel that adrenaline. But nervousness to me is not a bad thing. Nervousness is just one of those things that it makes you a little more alert. It makes you a little more conscious of what you're doing. And if you don't let that overtake you, it actually gives you energy to propel forward. So with this overcoming nervousness, if you're nervous, if you're watching this and you're nervous about doing a presentation, that is totally okay. That is 100% fine. And it may actually be a good thing that you can use when you're going into doing the presentations. All right, so this is where there are cues. Make eye contact with your audience to increase the sense of intimacy. Let's see here. Is it working? A little bit, maybe?
Before you were staring at the camera,
Right?
it was very obvious that you were not paying attention to us.
Right.
You were talking at us, not with. You were engaged with us. You were engaged with the camera versus.
Right.
The
So
physical audience.
that is actually a really good point. And when I did stare at the camera, this is what's going through my mind. It was, there's possibly people that are going to watch this, and I want to engage with them too. So, but that's a really good point. That when I do that, it disengages from you guys. All right. Okay, weave relatable stories into your presentation using narratives that make your message memorable and impactful. Okay. All of these things right here are things that, as I'm going through, I'm going to ask you at the end. It's going to be a quiz. It's not so much a quiz. I'm going to ask you at the end, what things did you remember that I actually did, and what things did you notice that I didn't do? Because this right here can be a great learning experience for me. It can be a great learning experience for anybody else who wants to give a talk as well. Use live polls or surveys to gather audience opinions, promoting engagement and making sure the audience feels involved. So who here feels involved in this talk? Thank you. I've got one person involved. That's good. Okay, well we'll try to get a little bit more. All right, effective delivery techniques. It's kind of some of the same stuff, more meaningful eye contact. I'm right here with you. Okay. Oh, look at that, purposeful gestures. Maintain good posture. All right, I can do that. Control your expressions. I'm gonna have to work on that one because I tend to smile a lot when I'm talking to people, especially when there's feedback. And I think that interaction with other people is a great thing, and it actually makes me very happy. Doesn't mean I don't like my own time, but I like both. Pitch variation, tone inflection, and volume control. I have, going back to my kids, they do not always have that volume control. So hopefully I can model that for them as well. All right. So I told you earlier that I was going to talk a little bit more about my son. And with him, there's the power of communication. Um, so he is just about as tall as me. I don't know, last year he was like this big. Now all of a sudden this year he's like, I have to step on my tippy toes a little bit just to make sure I'm a little higher. I'm growing my hair out a little bit just so it's a little bit, higher than him. He plays tennis. He also does robotics. He's a senior in high school, and he is he's in the marching band. He plays one of those, a vibraphone where you have four mallets, and he like goes all over the place with that. And he also plays the keyboard, and I just hear him when he's got some downtime. He'll go up to his room, and all of a sudden he has a keyboard in his room. All of a sudden you hear this amazing music coming out of his room. And it's one of those things that when I hear that, I have to pause and just be like, wow, that is amazing, the gifts that he has in these different areas. So as a senior, we've been working on trying to get him to choose a college. I found out the different things that he thinks are important, and I showed him how to make a spreadsheet, and then he was like, oh, okay. And he made it into this amazing, beautiful thing with calculations and where he could actually determine what is the value that I would get from these colleges. What's the college life like? What's the cost? What's their acceptance rate? Like just all of these different metrics. And I am a data person, and to see him put all of that together, super amazing to me. I'm just excited about the things that he's going to do as he goes into college. But sometimes communication is not his strongest point. For instance, when he got he's been accepted to a few colleges already, and which is amazing. But when he got his first acceptance letter to a college that was on his list, he never told us. We went a couple weeks, and then we got an email about like housing information and financial aid, and so great that your son's been accepted, and it had all that information. We're like, what? How did this happen? And to him, he was like, well, I figured I would get accepted to some colleges, and it wasn't that big a deal. Right? But the communication there, to him, it wasn't important. To us, it was important. One of the things with communication is you can't just communicate what's important to you. There's sometimes when we see speakers that they really focus on what's important to them, but they forget to check in with the audience to see, is this resonating? Am I speaking at the right level? And it's one of those things that's really important to make sure that you're reaching everybody that's going to be in your audience, or at least, the majority of them. All right, so selecting visual aids. So far, you can see that this has been pretty basic. So I threw in some visual aids. And since it is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, I thought I'd throw in some of these. Yeah, I love that show. It's just so good. This one I thought was a little more poignant. I was like, oh, I wonder how many people out there have MFA that was set by somebody else because their passwords were leaked, and now they can't get back in. That's the real thing. So with these visual aids, I was actually thinking, okay, I sometimes have to give presentations. I have to have ways to inform. I have to have ways to inform people about what InfoSec does. People that are not InfoSec people. And honestly, that is something that I'm always working on. Our cybersecurity awareness that we do, we have a yearly cybersecurity awareness that basically touches the things that we want to cover. And then we do cybersecurity awareness training every month for the rest of the year to try to make sure that people are still engaged throughout the year. We also do threat intelligence reviews every morning amongst my team, and then we'll choose something from that threat intelligence to share with the rest of the company. We try to make sure that it's relevant to people. We'll talk about whatever the latest breaches are, or which ransomware gang was caught by the FBI this time. It's one of those things where we just try to get people to keep talking about it. I didn't even realize I put that effect on there. So I'm always trying to figure out how to communicate all the things that we do. And this is something that I'd like to get your opinions on. Like, how would you break this? This is information that covers the whole gamut of what cybersecurity does and cybersecurity adjacent things. We'll call them MITRE ATT&CK. So how would you all break this down for your audiences?
Like visually break it down?
Sure. Visually.
I mean, I guess I would, from a visual perspective, I would just, instead of this half circle right here, instead, I would just have individual circles with the big word.
Okay.
Because there's just so much going on that, like, as a person, I'm trying to read everything.
Right.
Which is taking my attention away from you. Right?
Right.
I want you to tell me what this is. But not in a way where I feel dumb for not comprehending.
Right. Those are really good suggestions.
I would break it down depending on who my audience is.
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Because you could be talking to data security, they already know their stuff, but they don't know everything else.
Right.
Peel back like an onion, start at the perimeter, and then work your way in, and explain the differences between each one a little bit.
Peel it like an ogre.
Well, like an onion.
Oh, like an onion.
Yeah.
They have layers.
I agree with Eric, though. You gotta know your audience.
Yeah.
Right.
Make it relatable for your audience. These are like 7 times.
Oh yeah, DLP is like in every layer, isn't it?
Very.
Almost.
Well, really, that's a user implementation, so they understand their portion.
Right. What about the, like the MITRE ATT&CK matrix? Let's say you have an audience that you're speaking to that is interested in red teaming or, ethical hacking or something like that. What would be your method of breaking that?
First displayed on the IMAX.
Yeah.
Well, you can't read that from here? Yep, that would be helpful.
Gotta take it in chunks too. Can't try to explain it all at once.
It's too much, right?
It's way too much, yeah.
I feel like you almost have to have like situational context. Reconnaissance, like what, wow, reconnaissance, what you're doing.
Or tell a story that involves multiple pieces versus reading from a textbook or get the situation, it's putting the situational, giving that much more context into a big story versus, and then just a scene. If you can tell a story using 7 elements out of 14, great. Then you can build something else off after that. Makes it much more relatable and digestible. It goes back to.
I agree with that 100%. That's much more engaging. First explain what it is, and then walk through how it could be used, using it as a practical example to engage the audience. It's pretty good.
Anything else before I go to the next one? All right, so actually one of your friends posted this on LinkedIn and I thought it was absolutely amazing. This covers so many different areas, but it's so busy. So actually before we started doing this talk, I was talking to you. And yeah, we were talking about, okay, so when I first saw this, I thought, this would be a great centerpiece for a talk. And then I was like, no, there's too much here. Well, each one of these sections, there's 12 different sections that we cover in cybersecurity. Like this is a good basis for what we do in InfoSec. It's got, of course, authentication or authorization. You get audit and compliance down here. And then I started thinking, audit and compliance. So what kind of audits? ISO 27001, PCI, SOX. Oh, GDPR's on there. Oh, there's all the different privacies. There's 19 different states right now that have privacy laws that are in place that weren't in place 2 years ago. Well, most of them weren't in place 2 years ago. Within the next year and a half or so, all of those will become effective, and they all have these different requirements. They're mostly the same requirements, but they're not all exactly the same, and they have different ways that they need to handle things. So just inside audit and compliance, there's multiple talks right there. There's multiple areas of explanation that are needed right there. So then we were talking about each one of these dots could be its own talk or its own series of talks. So I'm toying with the idea of trying to get people to, I just noticed a misspelling up there. I'm not going to say where it is, so the rest of you can kind of look for that now. But I'm toying with the idea of getting multiple people to use this as a basis for their talk. So we can end up actually going through and talking about different parts of all of this and with every one of these areas, there's most people who are not experts in all of those areas. I know I'm not. I have a knowledge of them, but there's areas right there where each and every one of you out here has more expertise than I do. So that's one of my thoughts for next year. We'll see if we actually develop this, but I wanted to put that little bug out there so that you can think about, what you want to add. And we're still waiting on your part too. I'm looking for you to give a talk again. We good. All right, so I actually took one part that I was like, okay, looking at all of this, what is something that is kind of in and around all of this right now that isn't specifically up there that you guys can think of? There's a lot of things covered up here, but there's something that's really, it's a buzzword. Let's say it. It's a buzzword.
AI.
Oh, AI? Yeah, AI. So I started to break down AI and my thoughts on an AI policy and why I started doing some research and some things. And I was like, okay, this again is a lot of information. So again, how would you all break this down into its own presentation?
You could really narrow in on the data classifications and how you need to protect those different data classifications and what's going in your AI models. That could be the type of presentation.
Yep. Yeah, just breaking it down into each part.
Keep it super high level too. What is AI? What is the meaning of AI? Everybody's got a little slight different take on it. Impacts our lives in different ways.
Yep.
In the second to last bullet, you specifically call out open AI systems, but you don't call out any other system or vendor supplier.
So it's interesting because I did capitalize that, and it should be capitalized. The system shouldn't be capitalized. 'Cause really what's referenced there is open AI that likes to share with other AIs to help build learning models across the AI world. Oh, so when actually going back to the AI for a second, when I was researching AI and I was like, okay, closed AI versus open AI, what does AI have to say about closed AI versus open AI? And I really should have kept the definition I was given, but basically it was OpenAI is willing to share and help things grow and is what all AI should do in order to make AI better and the world a better place. Closed AI is for selfish people that don't want to share, and it was so funny the dichotomy that between those two. It's one of those things I'm going to have to try to see if I can replicate or if AI has learned how to answer in maybe less divisive way. All right, so navigating questions and answers. questions and answers are one of those things that I think, again, makes a lot of people nervous because you don't know what's going to come at you. But at the same time, when you go up to give a talk, generally, this is information that you've researched. Because you researched it, even if other people know about it, there's probably things that they didn't run across, probably not as focused as you are on this particular topic. So, for me, I think of it like nobody's going to know all the answers. One of the big things to do is to make sure that you're actually thinking about what the person is asking. You're like focused and actually listening to what their questions are. And for me, if you don't know, this is hard for me to do, but say you don't know. It just makes things so much better in the long run. Because then you can actually work towards finding the answer with other people as well. Oh wait, there's more maintain eye contact on there as well. All right, yeah, so when you speak, when you're putting yourself out there to share information that you have, to share opinions that you have or knowledge that you have, it has a real effect on other people. For me, when I think about somebody who is up here giving a talk, there's something in my mind going, they are trying to share a piece of themselves with me. They're trying to share something that is important to them with me. And that generally makes it so that, I don't know, it just gives me a new level of respect for them. Even if they're up here, they're stumbling, they're nervous, I don't disrespect people who are trying to share something legitimate with, that they feel is something legitimate that needs to be shared with other people. I think it's so important and it can have such a big impact. And often, the things that we do on a regular basis, the things on how we handle things, all of those things are things that become our own expertise areas. And to somebody else, it may seem so foreign, but to us, it's natural. And so you can have a real effect on other people whenever you share, in this format, or whenever you're sharing, like you're really sharing with somebody else. All right, so this is one of those things that I have not really done a lot of, but I think over this next year, I'm planning on trying to give more talks, and I'm thinking about things that I can speak about that are more in the technical nature, just because that can be so much fun. But it's also like immediately I go to troubleshooting something, pulling the logs out of the event viewer, turning it into a text document, looking for the patterns. It's not always something that can translate well up onto the screen. So some of these metrics that they have, and actually tracking these metrics, this was a new concept to me as I was looking through this. But I thought, I'm going to leave that in there because that's something that moving forward, I think I'm going to start doing. And it goes along with the surveys that they were talking about as well. Who in here thinks that the surveys and metrics are a good idea? See, I did a live survey. Yes. All right. All right. So I'm not going to read this up here, but there are a lot of things to consider when you're giving a talk. There's, most importantly, obviously, is the maintaining eye contact and talking about DLP. Like, those are the things that are the most important in here. No, but keeping in mind your tone while you're talking, keeping in mind your volume control was one of them that was on one of the previous slides there. Keeping in mind your pacing, again, not always talking too quickly and moving on from things too quickly, but sometimes taking that step back. And that was one of those things I was thinking about when I was like, okay, I'm going to put some questions in here and get some of your opinions on some of these things. There's times to slow down while you're giving the talks as well. I did have a few aimless transitions in there. Not seamless, but aimless. All right. These are just some more of those engagement metrics. I thought that this was pretty interesting while I was looking at it too, specifically the collaboration opportunities. So within the talk, they're mentioning or within this slide set, mentioning the collaboration opportunities. Who here would like to give a talk over the next year? This is the right group. Every single one of you. I don't think that it is possible to get a better metric than that. So I'm gonna give credit to this talk for convincing you all. No, I know that you all have such a great attitudes about the community, great ways that you show that you're engaged in the community and are wanting to give back to it. You're wanting to help build more into the cybersecurity community. And I think that's one of the things that really makes me I love this organization. I love when we get together and we hang out and we share information. It is absolutely amazing. And I am really looking forward to all of the new talks that are going to come up. And I would like to encourage you to, instead of just coming up with your own talk, actually collaborate with others on some of your talks as well. That's one of those things that we don't do too much around here. And I think it could be interesting to see how many two-person talks we could get. Along with that, when you start doing these two-person talks, now there's this new connection outside of just meeting here together as a group. And that's one of the things with building community. If you can create that more interpersonal connection with those people that are sitting by you, it makes our community that much stronger. Thank you all. Here's my information. There are like 567 million or something, or 56,733,164 other Esquire trades, CISSP, CCSP, PMP out there. So it's not that unique, but this is my contact information if any of you are missing it. And thank you very much. Oh, any questions before I shut this down?
I was wondering, something that I guess we didn't overall didn't speak to was fielding questions in the middle of the presentation. There was prompts for
That never happens.
There's prompts for collaboration.
Right.
And like a lot of the talk, like when I'm at work and I'm in a meeting and somebody's giving a presentation, they'll usually just come out and say, hey, if you have a question that comes up, feel free to ask, at that moment, or
Right.
type it in or whatever, and we'll get to it. As
When we
at
can.
the next natural break in the presentation.
Yeah.
Not as And because it seems like when people do a Q&A part,
At the end,
At
if
the
something's
end,
missing.
quiet. like,
Yeah.
we either go quiet, yeah, because it's like, oh, I had something, but I forgot it.
Right. That is a really good point. And you saying that kind of sparked in me that I was just talking about how it's good to like slow down and pause and create natural breaks, create those synthetic breaks in there. And that may be a good time to give some prompts for those questions as well. But yeah, I 100% agree. Like just letting people know it's okay to ask questions in the middle, and we'll try to do that. That's a good point. Were there other things that you saw that things that I did well? That's what I'm looking for. Things that I didn't do as well. I mean, yeah, I actually want those.
What is your head when you're on stage?
Right?
How do you pace yourself? I have a tendency to talk really fast and fumble over my words in those situations.
Right.
And it takes me a few moments to,
Get
take in some
yourself-
water, regulate,
Right.
doesn't matter how many times I've gone over this stuff. It's always, I always get this part.
Right. In some situations, I didn't do it here tonight. It probably would have been a good thing for me to do. What time is it? Oh, we're in a good spot. But in some situations, like in the presentation itself, you can throw timers. And I, at one point, did that a few times. And then because I thought it would be a good idea, and it probably is to a certain extent. Just kind of keep things moving forward. But I also found that maybe there was something, like there was questions, or there was something that this particular audience needed a little bit more of, and I didn't time it right. So there's pros to it that you can actually keep yourself on pace, and if you set up those timers, then you don't even have to really move it, and if you practiced it, you'll be right on time. But there's always that possibility of going, oh wait, I needed to go back to that slide again. And, all right, any other questions? So I actually I'm gonna go back to my favorite slide on here. You guys know which one that is, right? This side of the room is going, yeah. Before we walk away from this, what ideas do you all have that you think would be good things to present on based on this slide? This slide not being like the only source, but like this being a year-long project to get through.
I think emergency response is a really interesting topic.
That is a good one.
Doesn't always get talked about as frequently.
Right.
Plus, management usually is like, well, I don't know what we're going to do with this emergency response. We don't always have everyone in it.
And it's something that you have playbooks on, but you don't execute until necessary, and then.
Right.
This day and age too, disaster recovery. It's not a matter of if you're going to get back, it's a matter of when.
Yeah.
You get back up and rolling as fast as possible. So I talk about his interest in especially on talking to customers. Some of them are like, yeah, we got to have some disaster recovery, then we go through it. we're like, it's pretty loose.
Right.
Third-party management is kind of interesting because, I mean, especially from like a vendor perspective. Like I work as a vendor supplier to my client, and so we get caught up in third-party management in terms of like contract negotiations, contract fulfillment, things that we're held to as part of the contract, but also the nitty-gritty and stuff like the gray details. But then we also work with their other third-party suppliers for other things, part of the business.
Right. Yeah, and with third-party management, just like that very top one is vendor risk assessment.
Yeah.
It is amazing to me when you look at what's out there about other vendors and what's out there about your own company, and you try to figure out what's important to remediate, what's real, what's not real.
And I think that's coming. I think that's getting highlighted this year and going forward with VMware being owned by a non-US company.
Right.
And there's employers out there, big employers, that either they're not allowed to or they won't do business to that scale with companies that are owned by foreign entities.
Yep. For sure. So emergency response, disaster recovery, I think it's so interesting that those were the first two that were picked. Because, I mean, one of them's number 8 and number 12, but really they're number 1 and number 2. And they're like side by side.
Network security.
So
Audit
with,
compliance is really, it's kind of weirdly falls under finance in some places.
it does.
Um,
Compliance checks in financial systems. Compliance
It's
is
such a
one of those-
weird, it's so
I
convoluted.
love compliance.
It's so hard. Because for us, compliance can tie into disaster recovery. Because we have to do things like, we have to give ourselves internal ratings of disaster recovery criticality.
Right?
And then that ties into compliance. Because if you have this tool set that's incredibly reliant on the business to operate, and and the data center that your tool set is in blows up, where is that? And the business can't run without that tool set.
Right.
That becomes, then the company becomes out of compliance. It's spiral.
Compliance covers so many different areas. Like when you look at how, okay, so ISO 27001 is a little bit more structured in what you have to meet. But you look at like SOX compliance, you look at SOC compliance, you're looking at how the business is running. You're looking at what the business says it's going to do and how they're going to meet other criteria or contractual requirements. And often in those criteria or contractual requirements are like policies around disaster recovery and being able to show that you've tested your disaster recovery. There's the encryption that you use, what kind of authentication you use, the audit compliance, the reason why, and yeah, I'm just gonna let it out there, the reason why I love audit and compliance is because it helps cover so many of these other areas. And it gives us, in InfoSec, we know the risks that are out there. We know that there's real companies being breached. There's real identities that are being lost. There's real information that has value that's being lost and we're going into the wrong hands. We know that, but often other areas of the business aren't thinking about it. Even if they know it, it's not at the forefront of their purpose. And with audit and compliance covering so many of these different areas, it actually helps us be able to keep that information safe.
And I feel that I think you did a really good job talking to that. I think what it also does is it adds another level to that, and that's accountability.
Yes.
Because that compliance then is derived from state or federal legislation, makes our job. A lot of people, I mean, probably not nowadays, but like before, IT was always, the butt of jokes, and regardless of where you are, if it's a big organization or a small organization. But it's like, no, this stuff is, we've been legitimized through, unfortunately, through the government, because there is levels of accountability that require that level, these compliances and audits and, all these things.
Right.
Whether it was PCI or SOX or, all that stuff.
Right, or the someday CMMC.
Yeah.
I think that'll be, yeah. Yeah, I think no matter where the compliance comes from, if you're like, okay, compliance is not security. Because you're compliant with something, it doesn't mean you're necessarily secure. However, it gives you a good baseline to work from. And if you're doing it, if you're looking at compliance, not as something where, like as IT and as security people, if we're looking at it as not something to check the box, but something to actually go, okay, what's the purpose of this? And how do we apply it in a good way to actually keep things secure? It gives us a good roadmap on how to get there. I might give a talk on compliance. Just saying.
Just make sure you bring the caffeine.
I'll hand out monsters to everybody. All right, anything else you guys would like to point out that would be good for us to dig into over this next year?
Good old vulnerabilities. There's access in so many different ways, whether network, physical security, perimeter security, cloud, IoT, doesn't matter where you're at, you're always going to have some type of vulnerability that needs to be either looked into, patched, or remedied one way or another.
Right, yeah. You're right, like there are so many different areas that can be vulnerable. And the more that we integrate new things into IT, the more areas that we're going to be vulnerable. So how do you manage all those vulnerabilities? What's your vulnerability management like? And how do you actually make sure that things are being patched? And how do you deal with 0 days? Like there's a lot of cool tools out there that are helpful for that as well. All right, again, thank you all so much. I'm going to really stop the stream now. I appreciate this, everybody.